So, welcome everybody. My name is Elizabeth Goldberg, and I am a science master teacher at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. We are at the very bottom of Texas, so far at the bottom that if you go any further, you are going to hit Mexico or the Gulf. So it is a pleasure to join you today, and we are going to be talking about how to teach inquiry remotely. So I am going to try to make this session as interactive as possible. We'll see how well it goes, but the more you participate, the better it will be. So please feel free to over-participate versus under-participate for the sake of this session. So the first question I have for everybody is, why are we here? And I think for the majority of us, the answer is this little fellow, the coronavirus. So we pretty much, within a matter of weeks, days, for some of us felt like hours, had to completely transform education. We had to go from teaching like this, where you're face to face in front of students in a classroom. Oh, my slideshow is not showing? I got a note. Is it showing? Give me like a thumbs up if it's showing. Oh, thank you. See, you're already interacting. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so we had to go from teaching like this, where we were face-to-face in front of our students in our classrooms, to teaching like this, where we had to teach either entirely or partially remotely. And that was a really big challenge. That was really hard to do for a couple of reasons. First, it would be hard to do in the best of situations. Having to completely transform the way you teach in a matter of a few days is hard, but it's particularly hard because we are UTeach, and inquiry is in our DNA. We have been taught from the very beginning that we need to be using inquiry-based learning, student-centered learning, engaging with our students, using manipulatives, using hands-on, being right there with them, asking questions, having them talk to each other. And then they took it all away. They said, basically, do all your best teaching without any of your best tools. And we were left to flounder. And I have been so impressed on how imaginative and creative everyone has been in this crisis to be able to do really good teaching without those tools. So the question that I have for everyone now is, can you even teach inquiry remotely? And the fact that you are at this session, I hope everyone leaves with an emphatic, yes, we can. So in order to get there, I'm going to share with you 4 strategies. I want to start off by saying this is by no means an exhaustive list of ways to teach inquiry remotely, nor is it going to be a presentation about how to do full inquiry. That's not where we're going with this. These are going to be strategies that we used in the spring that were particularly effective. And I like these strategies because they're easy, they're free, and they are ones that you're probably already using. And I'm just going to show you ways to integrate them into the technology realm. The other thing that I like about these strategies is that they do double duty. Because here's the thing. Some of us are going to be teaching in sort of a hybrid model. Maybe your campus is rolling out. So you're going to have students starting virtually, and then they're going to start coming to the classroom. Or maybe you're going to have alternate days. Some students you see face-to-face on Monday, Wednesday, and then you see them online Tuesday, Thursday. So the thing about these strategies is that they're going to work whether you're online or whether you are face-to-face. So that way you don't have to come up with 2 separate lessons, which is really the goal there, because we're already doing enough work. We don't need to do any more than that. So that is why I picked these 4 in particular: visuals, manipulatives, demos, and simulations. All right, so let's start with the first one, visuals. Visuals, visuals, visuals. So important, I put it 3 times with 3 exclamation. One thing I like to tell to my students is that you live and die by your visuals. If you have great visuals, your students can learn literally anything. If you have bad visuals or no visuals, you might as well be beating your head against a wall. It's just not going to be pretty. So the first thing is we're going to talk about how to embed visuals into your remote learning. And this is where I said, I want this to be interactive. So I feel like the best way to show you is to actually have you act like students. So you can see me model these strategies, because if I were to just talk to you for an hour and 15 minutes, one, it feels weird to me. And two, you probably wouldn't get as much out of this session. So if you can, if you haven't done so already, please open up your chat box. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a little chat button. If you're in full screen mode, it will be at the top. There, if you go to the top and hover, there's a little button that says more with like 3 dots. And if you pull that down, it will give you the chat feature. Unfortunately, Zoom is not great at showing Zoom while you're doing Zoom, so I can't show you that. But if you need help, just put it in the chat, and I'm sure somebody, oh, you can't because you're not in the chat, but we'll figure it out together. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this slide right here. So this is a lesson that we do with our step 1 students. It's an elementary school level lesson. And what we have is we have a tub of water, and we stick little objects in the water, and some of them sink and some of them float. And then we give them these little cards. You can see right here on your screen, this is what the little cards would look like. And then they have to put the cards on the mat, whether they sank on the bottom or whether they float on the top. Now, I can't do this remotely because I can't hand the kids a tub of water and the little cards. The other problem is, even if I'm face-to-face, do I really want to deal with sterilizing all these little objects and all these little cards with my face-to-face students? Probably not. So what I did here instead is I actually made the map that you're seeing with the answers. These are the answers from the lab, already done. Hand it to the students. As you can see right here, the ones in red were the ones that float. So that would be the baseball, the small bear, and the short rod. I'm going to try to change my pen color here. And then the ones in blue, the golf ball, the spider, and the cube all sink. So there they are. There are the answers. Here's your job. I want you in the chat box to tell me what all the objects that sink have in common and what all the objects that float have in common. However, before you do, I'm going to type into the chat box how I want that to look. So I have a sink equals and a float equals. And I would highly recommend when you're having your students use the chat feature to model how you want them to answer, because that will make their answers a little bit clearer when they're putting it in there. So to reiterate, here are the answers. Baseball, small bear, and short rod all float. Golf ball, spider, and cube all sink. Please tell me in the chat box, what do all of the objects that float have in common, and what do all the objects that sink have in common? And I see the answers are coming in fast and furious. I'm seeing things about dots in the triangles. I'm seeing things about density. I'm seeing things about circles being closer together and further apart. Excellent. Congratulations, you all passed 4th grade. Good job. All right, so now what I need is I'm actually going to need somebody to unmute their microphone and kind of explain their answer to the group, to the class. To do this, you can kind of do it a couple of ways. You have a participant list, so you can just randomly pick who you want to answer. You could have people answer based off their answers in the chat box, especially if there's a particular answer you want to divulge into a little bit more, or you can just call for volunteers. I don't know how many people, okay, we have 160 people right now, so it's going to be fun. So I'm going to call on somebody who typed into the chat box. When I call on you, if you wouldn't mind unmuting your microphone, that way we can hear you explain your answers. So I have this one who just typed, Olivia Barro. Olivia Barro, would you mind unmuting your microphone? Can you do that? If you don't know where on the Zoom features, the microphone is in the bottom left-hand corner. You can just click unmute there. Or if you're in full presentation mode, it will be on that hovering panel at the top, and then you can just click on the microphone. So Olivia Bato, would you be able to unmute?
Yes.
Excellent.
So, I noticed that the dots on the triangles were either far away from each other or closer together. So,
excellent. Okay, so talk to me about this baseball. Where are the dots on the baseball?
So the dots inside the triangle are far away from each other.
Good. And then what about the golf ball?
They're very close to one another.
And could you tell me, what do you think, based off this map, what do you think those dots represent?
I want to say that the material is close together or far apart, and I think it represents like the weight. Like one might have air, and one does not.
Okay, so maybe it represents weight, maybe it represents air. I'm going to call on somebody else to kind of add to that. So Michelle Thornton, would you mind unmuting your microphone?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Awesome. So Michelle, can you help us out there? She's so close. It definitely has to do with the dots. So has to do with the dots. It has to do whether they're far apart or close together, but we need to know what those dots are. She wasn't quite sure. Is it weight? Is it air? What do you think those dots are?
I think those dots represent, I am going to say, space.
Okay, it definitely has to do with space. Space is part of the equation. Weight is part of the equation. But now we need to put those together. So I'm going to call on Rachel Harbor. Rachel Harbor, could you unmute your microphone and help us out here? What do you think they are?
I thought they were molecules. The matter, the mass and matter that they take up. So the molecules.
Bingo, she got it. There it is. It's actually right there, matter. I tried to underline it too. But yes, it is the matter. It is the molecules. Very good. So you were all correct. It had to do with space. It had to do with weight, but you had to put them together to get, and these molecules, the matter, and when we put them together, we get this idea of, somebody type it into the chat box. What happens when you put those together? Thank you, John. Density. Beautiful, density. So this is a lesson on density. And just like I would do here, I would have the students type into the chat box and then ask them some follow-up questions to get to that idea, which may not be super intuitive at first, which is the whole point of this lesson. If it was super intuitive, it wouldn't be a juicy lesson. And you want a nice juicy lesson with plenty of questions to ask the students. So now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to pivot back into my presentation mode, and I want you to type into the chat box, what were the strategies that I used to help our participants? Thank you so much for volunteering, being voluntold actually. So what were some strategies that I used that helped them get to that answer of density? So type into the chat box, what were some of the strategies that I used? I'm seeing questioning, I'm seeing leading questions, I'm seeing visuals, that's right, we're in the visual section. Highlighting what they said right, helping them each other out, affirming responses, going back to the image, using color coding. Exactly. What else? What else did we use? You're using it right now. Vocabulary, connected visuals, discussion piece, but chat box, yes, Elise, you're right, the chat box, we use that too. All right, so in this, we used the visuals, and within the visual, I actually annotated as well. This version of Zoom doesn't have the annotate feature, but if your license does, please use it. It's great. You can annotate, the students can annotate. Right now, I'm using annotate with just the PowerPoint. You have that as well. We used students using the chat box, and we had people unmuting their microphones and talking. When I teach remotely, I like to not just rely on one or the other. I like to use the chat box because it's sort of this democratic way that everybody can participate all at the same time. But I also like to use the unmute your microphone and have them talk because with the chat box, what's the issue? Type into the chat box, what's the issue if I were to just use the chat box? What would be the problem there? Oh, somebody asked about the proportions. Yeah, the proportions are way off. This spider is not as big as a baseball in real life. Okay, the students can copy each other. It's not great for the poor students who are slow typers or poor spellers. It's going to be hard to monitor. It's harder when you're on your phone because you're trying to manage both. Absolutely. And there's no teacher feedback. Exactly. So I like to think of the chat box as sort of asking a question to the whole class. Hey, class, what'd you think? And they sort of shout out their answers. And then you unmute the microphones and dive a little deeper into their thinking when you ask the students questions after that. So I like to use them in tandem. I don't like to just use the chat box, and I don't like to just call on students. I like to have the opportunity to go back and forth, give everyone a chance to answer, and then dive a little deeper into certain students' responses. All right, exactly, yeah, because some students are just going to type what they see in other people's chats. We're going to talk about that in just a second. I have a workaround for that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to my second example. This second example is going to show a couple of different ways to use visuals. The first thing is, how many visuals do you see now? Exactly. Thank you, Riva. She held up 2 fingers. Yes, we have 2 now. So here I'm going to be using 2 visuals because sometimes 1 visual isn't going to be enough. And you're going to see why in this example that you may need to use 2 visuals, especially with remote learning, because you can't manipulate the visuals quite as easily as you could face-to-face. The other thing is this first visual that I used was one that we created. This was created by Tim Sears, who's in the presentation today. He's one of my fellow master teachers at UTRGV. These images I just got from the Google. Feel free to use Google. In fact, when you're teaching online, it's so easy. You can literally be in the middle of a lesson and be like, wait, let me show you what a polar bear looks like. Go to Google, pull up a picture of a polar bear. Super easy, super efficient. So we're going to have 2 images. These are images that I pulled up off the internet. And we're going to look at why we would want to use 2 images in this situation. So I have a question here in the middle. This is a lesson about DNA. And it says, which bases bond together and why? We're going to answer this question together. But right now, I want you to just look at the image on the left. Pretend the one on the right's not there because I just covered it up. So in the chat box, please answer that question. Which bases bond together? Just the first part. Which bases bond together? Here's a little key at the bottom. Which bases bond together? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of answers. A to T, A standing for adenine, T standing for thymine, C to G. Oh, that was not supposed to happen. Don't look. Okay, C standing for cytosine, G standing for guanine. Excellent. All right, now I got another question for you. Is there ever a time where adenine, which is represented by the green, is bonded to cytosine, represented by the blue? Is there ever a time in this image where we see adenine bonded to cytosine? Okay, Jessica, where do you see it? Please unmute your microphone. Tell us, where do you see adenine bonded to cytosine?
Are you talking about in the actual image that you have?
Yeah, in the actual image that I have.
I don't see it in the actual image.
Okay, do you ever see thymine bonded to guanine?
Yes, when there's a mutation.
Okay, when there's a mutation, right. But in this image, do you ever see it?
I don't see it.
Very good. So the question is why? Why? Why does adenine only bond to thymine and cytosine only bond to guanine? We never see an exception in this image. So in order to answer that question, could you answer it from this image alone? Is the answer there? Does anyone see the answer here in this particular image? Yeah, exactly. You got it. It was a trick question. No, you shouldn't. All right. This one is really great at showing that adenine bonds to thymine and cytosine bonds to guanine, but it is not good at answering that second part of the question, the why. That's where you're going to the second image. So now I want everyone to look at the image on the right, and I want you to wait, stop the chat. Do not chat, because I have a special task for you. You are going to answer this question. Thank you. You are going to answer this question, but You are going to private chat to me. How do you private chat, you might ask? You will go to the little blue button at the bottom of the chat where it says everyone. Click that button and select Elizabeth Goldberg. Elizabeth Goldberg, host. All right, very good. So before you chat, make sure it's selected to Elizabeth Goldberg and just Elizabeth Goldberg. You are going to private chat your answer to me. Why does adenine only bond to thymine? And why does cytosine only bond to guanine? And we never see an exception in these images. Make sure you are set to the private chat before you put your answers. I'm seeing some private chats coming in. Keep them coming, keep them coming. You're like, what is she seeing? That's how you know it's working, because you can't see the answers, but I can see tons of them. I see one with science and an exclamation point. I agree. Very nice. Okay, so I think it's time I call on somebody to answer. We're going to go with, oh, they're coming so fast, it's hard for me to keep track. Let's see, Crystal Ann. Crystal Ann, could you unmute your microphone and help us out here?
Hi, yes. So what it looks like to me from the image is that the NH2 is bonding to the O and the N to the HN.
I'm going to draw what she's talking about right here. She has noticed these little dotty lines and saying that's probably a bond, and you are correct, that is a bond. But now I want you to tell me, what's the difference between the adenine and thymine and the guanine and the cytosine?
That's a good question.
All right, let's look at these bonds. Let's look at these bonds.
Oh, one is a triple and one is a double.
Bingo, you got it. So why can't adenine bond to cytosine? What would happen if adenine tried to bond to a cytosine?
It wouldn't have enough receptors or whatever they're called.
Right, it wouldn't be able to have enough bonds.
Okay.
You have that like dangling bond. You don't want that. No dangling bonds in biology, right? Not a good thing. All right, so exactly. Here with adenine and thymine, we have 2 bonds, whereas here with cytosine and guanine, we have 3. And that's why an adenine can never bond to a cytosine and a thymine cannot bond to a guanine because of the number of bonds. Excellent, very good. Thank you so much for helping us out with that one.
No problem.
So now what I want everyone to do is please return to the public chat, the everyone chat, the everyone chat. Okay, and so it should be set to everyone, not to private, not to me. And here's what I want you to do is I want you to answer the following question, which is, why did I need 2 images in this case? I could just use this image on the right. I could. It has the answers to both questions. Adenine bonds to thymine and cytosine bonds to guanine. But why did I choose to have 2 images instead of 1? Please type into the chat to everybody now. Everybody. I love what Sonia said there. She said, start with a simpler image. Sonia, I'm losing your last name because it's going so fast. Massey, Sonia Massey, can you unmute your microphone and elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yes, this is Sonia Massey. So the second image might be overwhelming, and even to the trained eye, I'm looking at it like, no, I don't really want to look at that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That might not be the best first image. Also, you don't really see the double helix.
Mm-hmm. Right, it doesn't look like the classic DNA that they're used to seeing.
So I think starting with the simpler and then building up to say like, this is what these, bases actually look like, and, taking it from there. But I think it makes sense to start with the more simple image for them to get that overall feel of DNA.
Exactly. So that's my point with this slide here is when you're using your image, be really mindful about starting with something especially you're starting online. So you really want to start with something just very simple, kind of build that foundational knowledge, and then add images that make it more complex, add that complexity to it. So, when you're doing that, go overboard on the images. This is not the time to skimp. They're not charging you by the colored copy. It's on your computer. You can go to town. I mean, don't overwhelm them all at once, show them one at a time, but really start with those simple foundational images and then build upon that with new images that add that additional layer of complexity that you're trying to get to with your students. The other thing that I want to talk about before we move on is what are the advantages of the private chat? I had you private chat this second question. Why does the A bond with T and the C with G? Why didn't I just say everybody public chat like we had done before? So I can think of several reasons, but I want to hear what you have to say. Into the chat box, please tell me what was the advantage of the private chat? Okay, I'm seeing some great answers about accountability, pushes everyone to respond without them knowing, a safe space. I love that safe space. Who said safe space? That was Sarah Wright. Sarah Wright, can you please unmute your microphone and tell us what you mean about a safe space? How is the private chat a safe space?
Hi, yeah, so I'm a university professor, former UTeach Austin alum. I teach in New Jersey, and I teach at a university that serves a really wide variety of students, really diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. And I know in my classes, certain types of students contribute more than others. And so having that sort of safe private area where they can tell me what they're thinking without being judged by other students or worrying about their spelling or saying the wrong thing, I think is good.
Oh, that was perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Exactly. So the benefit of the private chat is it gives everybody the ability to answer on their own without seeing each other's answers. So when you ask that question to the whole class, and some student shouts it out, or you ask it even to one student, they shout it out, it kind of gives away the answer to everyone. This is sort of that stop and think, like everybody think about the answer before we share as a group. So it gives everybody that opportunity to think about it on their own. And that's really going to be important with those more complex questions, like why do they bond together? The second thing, like Sarah said beautifully, is that it allows them to have this safe space where they are not being judged by their peers. So they don't have to worry about their spelling. They don't have to worry about their grammar. They don't have to worry about being wrong. If they're an English language learner, how terrifying is it to have to type your answers, academic answers, into a chat box where everybody can see? I mean, I'm scared to do that. And I am a terrible speller. And I don't want to look stupid or wrong. You are in a group with, not to scare you, 163 people. You probably don't want to put the wrong answer in front of all these STEM people about how DNA works. Guess what? Your students aren't any different. So that gives them that safe space. And then me as a teacher, I can look at those answers and kind of get a gauge of where my students are at. And then I can address certain answers. Maybe I want to call on someone who got it right. But maybe I also want to address a misconception, but I don't want to pinpoint the student who made it. I can say, oh, so somebody said that it might have to do with the backbone. So let's talk about the backbone. Is it the backbone? By doing that, I don't single out the student who made the misconception, but I still can address it in front of the class in a safe way so our students aren't feeling intimidated to participate online, just like they won't feel intimidated to participate in their classrooms. So with that, I would recommend that you use both the public chat for certain things where you just kind of want everyone's response, private chat maybe for the more complicated ones or you want to give them that safe space, and then again, utilizing multiple images to help build that foundational knowledge. Now, some people notice that in this one, you can actually chat to everybody. You may want to turn that off. You can change the settings where you can only chat to hosts, because otherwise your students can have nice little private conversations with each other during the lesson. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. So just realize that with Zoom, you can set it that they can only chat with you privately versus chatting with each other privately. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now the last one that I'm going to use with visuals is this slide. This comes from, oh, I'm going to butcher this. I always butcher this. Desmos? I think it's pronounced Desmos. Okay, good. I'm getting some thumbs up. Thank you. All right, so this is from Desmos, which I know you probably already knew about, but I just found out about it this summer and I'm in love with this. I'll show you it to you later. It's a graphing calculator software, and I took a screenshot, and this would be a lesson on slope because my math people are like, what about me? Where's my example? Here it is. So here is a screenshot I took of 3 lines. One of these lines is y equals 4x. One of these lines is y equals 2x. and one of these lines is y equals x. Now, I could ask them to, in the chat box, tell me which line is which. I could type in there, you know, tell me green equals red equals blue equals, and they could type their answer. I could have them unmute their microphones and tell me. We could do all of that. For my math people who are currently dying right now, sure, go in the chat box, type it away. I know you want to. I know you want to. You can go. You can do it. But that's not my purpose for this slide because I've already showed you those features. My purpose for this slide is to really talk about annotate. And this is one where I really would recommend annotating. If you have the Zoom capability to have the students annotate, great, go for it. I'll show you how to do that in just a second because I currently can't model that for you with this license. It doesn't have it. But you can also have them annotate with PowerPoint. You can use, Zoom has a whiteboard. You can annotate with that. And I'm going to open up the chat to anybody who wants to recommend other free whiteboard type softwares where people can have themselves and their students annotate. So the reason why I want to talk about annotate here is I'm going to ask for a volunteer to please tell me which line is y equals x. And to do that, in the participants, if you click participants, if you're in full screen mode, it will be in the hovering at the top. If you are not in full screen mode, it will be at the bottom, and it's a picture of two people. With the participants, there's going to be like a yes and a no button. If you click the yes, that means you're volunteering to answer. So click that yes if you want to answer which line is the y equals x, and I will see whose hand goes up. So another way to have the students volunteer online is just to have them do that. Oh, Elise Prevel. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Can you please unmute your microphone and tell us which line is y equals x?
Yeah, so I chose the green line as y equals x. Basically what I'm doing, yes, that's correct. Basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at the steepness of the line.
Okay.
So it is the less steep line of the options that we were given.
Excellent. It is the least steep of the options. And can you give me anything else, any other indicators of why this green line in particular might be y equals x versus 2x versus 4x?
If I wanted to, I could look at like the inputs and the outputs, so I could substitute in values. And if I were to look at that point up there, 2, 2, so whenever x is 2, y equals 2.
Let me go back. Okay, so wherever x equals 2, y equals 2. Okay, right here. So you're looking at that. So you could look at different points and plug those into our slope formula. You could also look at the rise is 2 and the run is 2, and versus here where, you know, the rise is not, I mean, yeah, the rise is still 2, but the run is not 2. Okay, excellent. So notice how she's talking. I am using my annotate feature to explain her thinking, to highlight things on here. And that's what I would recommend either you doing as the teacher, or better yet, have the students do. And if I could model that for you, I would. Have the students draw all over this and mark up their thinking so that way everyone can see, because when you're face to face, you have this. A student can go over there and they can point, and they can, where's my camera? They can point and they can say, it's here, it's there. But you can't really do that online. Doesn't make sense. So use the annotate features and replace their fingers with the annotate. Have them use the annotate to mark up all over the slide what they see, where their thinking is. So that way it makes sense to you as the teacher, and it makes sense to the classmates, and maybe even makes sense to them. Let's say they get something wrong. When they have to force to use that annotate feature, it can help correct their thinking. I did see somebody who mentioned about colorblind students. Absolutely try to make sure that you have other methods in place other than just color so that you can meet students who are colorblind, so you can be accessible. So the question that's coming in is, where do we find these features in Zoom? I'm glad you asked. So like I said, I can't model on this version, but I put some screenshots in. You will get the full PowerPoint at the end of this presentation, so you can go back and see it at your leisure. So here's a video that I created with my classroom interaction students. And this is basically the same presentation, just me talking to them. And in it, I overlaid some images of where you would find these features as a host. So you can go back and watch it, or you can just use the Zoom tutorials. And so here you can see we're marking up the screen with the students in real time, which was one of the features that I really love about Zoom. You can also see me teaching from bed because my daughter needed the couch to watch Frozen. I'm sure you all understand. All right, so the other thing is you can also show the names of who's annotating, which is really cool. That wasn't a feature before, they just added it. So this can be kind of like private versus public chat. You can have a public discussion where you can see who is annotating what, but you can also set it to private so that they can mark all over the screen and nobody knows who's marking up. So again, you have that double functionality with the annotate. The other thing is when you are not a host, it will look a little different. So I also put in a slide there to show what the non-host, what the participant view looks like versus the host view. So again, you can look at that later on your own time. All right, so now what we're going to talk about is we're going to shift from visuals to manipulatives. So you are probably like, oh, I love my manipulatives. I have all my cutout little features that I've made throughout the years, and now they are all locked up, sanitized in some cabinet somewhere, and I can't gain access to my manipulatives. What do I do? Well, great question. Let's talk about that. So you can make your own manipulatives, and this is where you are going to need that PowerPoint slide that I asked you to download at the beginning of the presentation. Sarah, if you wouldn't mind pasting the link again in case people came in after we started and they don't have access to it. So if you could click the box link and download the PowerPoint, it's a participant version. So you're pretty much going to have, I think, only 4 slides. One of them is going to be this one. And what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to exit the full screen mode, is you do need to be in this mode. Do not be in presentation mode. It won't work. And what I did here is this is a lesson that I do with my step 1 students. And I give them these decimal cards and I say, sort them, sort the decimal cards, and let's talk about them. But since I'm teaching online and I can't physically hand them the manipulatives, what I did is I made screenshots. I made a screenshot of each card and then I put it into a PowerPoint. And now people can move them around. So what I want you to do is download your PowerPoint, keep it in this mode, not presentation mode, and I want you to manipulate the cards in any way you like, any way that makes sense to you. Don't care. When you are done, you're going to type done into the chat box. This is very important. Make sure you give that instruction to your students because otherwise you'll be waiting forever. They'll be waiting forever and you'll be like, when are we going to move on? So please make sure they type done so you know when to move on. And then you can ask a student to share their screen and share what they did. Now, a couple of notes while I let everybody finish up with these is do not do, if you're going to have manipulatives, do not do it on a public sharing platform. I purposely didn't say, hey, go to a Google slide, because then while I'm playing with the manipulative, 20 other kids are playing with the manipulative. It really needs to be something where they download their own copy so that way they can work on their own and then share their screen with the rest of the class. So only they are working on it, not everybody working on it together. All right, I saw John, I think was our first one. I think he was done before we even started. I think he was that kid. John, are you that kid? I think you are. Okay, John, can you please share your screen to show us what you did? And in order to do that, if you've never shared screen before, at the bottom, it is going to have a share screen option. Or if you are in full screen mode, it would be hovered at the top. It's a green box. So whenever you're ready. All right, and can you unmute your microphone and tell us how you sorted the cards?
Yes, so I sorted them by order of least colored in to most colored in.
Excellent.
So if these are representing fractions, it would have been sorted from least to greatest, from the top left to the bottom right.
All right, very nice. And I'm sure a lot of us sorted it that way. I'm sure a lot of us also sorted it a different way. Does anyone else want to tell us how they sorted the cards? I'm gonna stop sharing John's screen. So here's John's screen. He sorted from the least filled in to the most filled in. Did anyone else sort it in a slightly different way? By color. Yeah, I think a lot of your students would also probably sort by color. That's probably a popular one, or maybe both, where they did color and least to most. So let's talk a little bit about the manipulatives, using these manipulatives. So from here, I could have the students sort on their own, and then the next task could be, okay, go back to your cards and now sort by equivalent value. And they could go back and they could do that second task. But in the chat box, what I want you to do is I want you to type real fast about, so what is the advantage of doing manipulatives like this? Oh, if you had trouble downloading the PowerPoint slides from the link, we will share all of that again at the end if you just want to visually watch with us. I know it's more fun when you can play with it too, but for the moment. Okay, so you can get different perspectives. It's more conceptual. They can still work individually. It's interactive. You can get diverse responses. There's still an element of muscle memory. Absolutely. So with all of these, you can still do that manipulative aspect. Another way that you can work manipulatives into your lesson is build it into your handouts. Build it into your handouts. So this is a step one lesson that we taught called tables and chairs. And here I have my table and chair manipulatives. And the students can move them up here and see how many chairs are there for every table. But on the side, on the PowerPoint slide itself, I actually have their worksheet. So here is the chart where they can fill in the numbers and they can look for the patterns and come up with the equations, and it's all built into the same PowerPoint slide. So what you can do is you can build everything into these PowerPoint slides, or whatever platform you prefer. And so that way the manipulatives and the rest of the worksheet kind of go hand in hand. Now, these are manipulatives that I created, but let's say you want manipulatives that are already created. So I'm going to type into the chat box. I didn't put it into the presentation because I just found out about it after we already uploaded the links, but there is a Facebook group called Teaching with Neons that has free manipulatives, math manipulatives that are fantastic. I would highly recommend using those. And I'm going to open up the chat right now for other people to add their sources where they have found free manipulatives that they love, that they've used, and you can access those. And hopefully we'll be able to share the chat after this session. But if you're worried that you won't get the chat, you can always take a little screenshot of it or write down some of the ideas that people are sharing with free online manipulatives that you can use in your classroom. Thank you, Jacqueline. The source that I gave was called Teaching with Neons. Teaching with Neons, it's a Facebook group, and they have some really great math manipulatives. Oh, I'm getting some from my bio. Teachers Pay Teachers, absolutely, great sources. Okay, so moving on, the next one we're going to talk about is demos. So just like you would use demos in your classroom, you can use demos online. And you can use them in a variety of ways. One, you can show a pre-made video, just like you would on your classroom. And again, this is very easy because you're already online. So you could show, say, a YouTube video. Here I have one of alkali metals reacting in water. And I'm a big fan of muting videos and asking questions over the video. So I could ask the students, what happened? Okay, that was the first alkali metal. Now predict what's going to happen with the second alkali metal. Predictions, what's going to happen? Come on, my chemistry people. We got the lithium. What's going to happen when I add the sodium? Okay, let's see if you're right. All right, nice. Okay, last potassium, predictions, what's going to happen? There you go. Do not try that at home. Do not. All right, so you could have the students, just like you would show a video in class, talk about what's going on in the video. You can also create your own video. I know flipped classrooms are very popular and are going to just be more popular in this environment. So creating your own micro lecture, having the students watch the video, and then having them talk about the video during your synchronous instruction. Yeah, I guess they had a little extra potassium. Never let potassium go to waste when you can throw it in water and create fire. All right, the other thing that I wanted to show for you right now, and the reason why I've been kind of disappearing off screen, is you can also demo in real time with your camera. So I am going to stop the screen share for just a second. So that way you can see me. And if you want to see me nice and big, you can go from gallery view to speaker view. But if you like seeing each other, don't blame me, that's more fun. And what I have here is I have two identical glasses of water. Or are they? I will now add a drop of red food coloring. Sorry, people, this is the extent of the magic show. You get red food coloring and water. All right, and now I want you to tell what might be the difference between these two glasses. What might be the difference between these two glasses? It's going to be like 20 questions because you can't actually touch them. So what is the difference between the two glasses? Any ideas? Okay, it's really hard for me to check the chat and hold these at the same time, so I'm gonna have to put them down. All right, Marie Capitelli, can you please unmute your microphone and tell us what you think the difference between the two glasses?
One is hot water and the other one is cold water, probably.
And why are you saying that? What gave it away?
Because of the way the food coloring dissolves faster in one than the other one.
Absolutely, you would be correct. One is hot, one is cold. There you go. We just learned about diffusion online. There we go. So also feel free to demo online with your students. You don't need any fancy equipments or videos or anything like that. Just household kitchen chemistry that you can come up with. I was talking with, and we were likening teaching online to that scene of Apollo 13, where they're basically like, here's a box of stuff, build a space shuttle. That's gonna be our fall. It's gonna be fun. So you feel free to do those as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. How am I doing on time? Just quick. All right, there we go. Sorry, just reloading everything. Okay, thank you, Amy. All right, so now what we're going to do, sorry, one more thing, just gotta go into full screen mode, okay, is we're gonna talk a little bit about simulations. Simulations are great because they actually were designed to be done online. So there's really not much tweaking you have to do. But my little twist on the simulation is just like when we talked about before. When using the simulations, don't just have the students run off and do it on their own. Use the chat feature, have them unmute the microphone, let them share their screen, let them interact with each other, ask them questions as they're doing the simulation to, again, embed that inquiry into these activities, because the simulations on their own will not be inquiry-based. What will be inquiry-based is you adding those extra elements to help them get there, to help them see the answers for themselves and interact with each other to figure out those answers. So 3 of my favorite simulations, the first one that I promised you was that Desmos graphing calculator. If you haven't seen it before, I'm gonna pull it up. Oops, I need to new share. There we go. Can you all see the calculator now? Give me like a thumbs up. All right, awesome, thank you. So this one is a graphing calculator software. You can type in equations with the students, and then you can talk about it. And you can zoom in, you can select different lines, and just like we talked about before, instead of doing a still screenshot, you can actually be adding to it with the class. Have them share ask them to create some sort of line, have them share their screen, have them annotate all over it, point and circle and doodle, and really use that to its full advantage. Another one that I really like is the HHMI Biointeractives. There are so many great ones that they have, but one of my favorites and very topical is the Virus Explorer. And the Virus Explorer, unfortunately, when they designed it, they did not design the coronavirus, because even though coronavirus was a thing, it wasn't everything like it is right now. But you can see these other viruses that they have. And I love this one because you can go in and you can move around the virus, look inside, compare the relative sizes of viruses, and you can also, let's see, go back. You can also have them compare things like what kind of genome is it? Is it a DNA virus? Is it an RNA virus? How does the transmission occur? Who are the hosts? Is there a vaccine available? And I have had several students create really fantastic, oh, you can't see what I'm clicking. Oh dear. All right, let me fix that. There we go, can we see? Thumbs up. Technology, so great. Okay, so I have had students create just amazing, fantastic lessons using this Virus Explorer that really allow them to delve deep into different topics when it comes to immunology. So this is another one of my favorites. And then I also saw somebody put in PhET. Absolutely, PhET is an oldie but a goodie, and it has math, it has science, they have pre-made lessons, but again, those lessons may not be inquiry-based, so that you as the teacher come in and you can add those elements to it. Okay. And right now we can again use our chat box to our advantage. So if you have another resource that you would like to recommend to the group, please do so and tell us about other simulations that you like. Again, this is by no means an exhaustive list. These are just some of my favorites that I included. All right, we're coming towards the end. So here are some of the Zoom features that I went over today, just to recap. We have the chat. Use the private chat, use the public chat. They're gonna help you in different ways in your classroom. Use the screen share your screen, and have the students share their screen. Let them share what handouts they're working on, what web pages they're looking at, what simulations they're using. Use that functionality to your advantage. And don't just have them type, let them talk. Let them have that interaction with you, with each other. Have them unmute their microphone. And finally, breakout rooms. And we'll talk about breakout rooms in just a little bit. And then I did include a link in the PowerPoint presentation with the Zoom tutorials if you would like to see any of these more. Now, some of you are like, Elizabeth, I can't use Zoom. My district doesn't allow Zoom. That's okay, because all these other virtual meeting platforms probably have very similar, if not the same functionality. So I've included some of the most common with hyperlinks that will give you information about each one, so you can see which features they have and how functional they are and how similar they are to the features that are in Zoom. All right, now breakout rooms. Amy, how much time do we have? 15 minutes? Awesome, great, that is awesome. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna try out the breakout rooms, which is one of my favorite ways, because that allows us to go from this big giant group to sort of the smaller groups where students can discuss with each other. Oh yeah, physics classroom, I love that one. That one's a great one. So in order to do the breakout rooms, couple of guidelines. If you have done breakout rooms in the past, or if you've never done breakout rooms, one of the disadvantages of a breakout room is you are, as a teacher, you're flying blind. Because when you're face-to-face with your students, you can see which students are on task and which ones are off task, which ones are done and which ones aren't. You can't see that with the breakout room. You're gonna be basically, you send them out and then you can visit each room, but you're kind of hoping for the best. You don't really know which room to visit or who needs your help or if they're on task or anything like that. So here are my little quick tips on how to make your breakout rooms more effective. First thing, assign tasks. In each breakout room, have the students, either you assign it or have them assign themselves. Different tasks, I would recommend the following 3, but you can always add others. Reporter, this is gonna be the person who's gonna report back to the main group. That way you're not sitting there being like, who wants to share? And crickets. So you can be like, okay, Group 1, who is your reporter? Great, you share. So it just kind of alleviates that issue. 2 is a recorder. You want to have somebody recording what the group is doing on some sort of wiki. I'll go over why in just a second. And then 3rd is like a timekeeper. The second thing is you want to make sure that you have very specific questions that you have written down that they are going to be answering in the discussion breakout rooms. Now, once I put you in the breakout rooms, you will not be able to see these questions. So let me go to that Google Doc and show you how I set up my Google Doc and why you want a Google Doc or some sort of wiki. Again, doesn't have to be Google Doc, but it does need to be some sort of format, whether it's a Padlet, a Google Slide, a Google Sheet, whatever your preferred preference is, that allows everybody to type in real time and see each other's responses. Here's why. So here is my instructions. I typed it on here. So when I leave, you can all go and, oh, you know what? Let me copy and paste this into the chat. So everybody, when we leave, this is going to disappear. So right now, click it right now. That's going to take you to the Google Doc. Have it off to the side. We'll get to it in a second. But click it now, because once we go into our breakout rooms, it's going to be gone. All right. So the reason why you want something like this is because, 1, it puts the questions again right here. Don't fill it in yet. We're not there yet. Just make sure you have it. Okay. So it's going to put the questions right here so you can see them again. I put it in a table format, but you can have it in a list format, whatever you like. And then so they can see the questions. And also I have it set up by rooms. So I just numbered the rooms, but you can also have names for the rooms, and you can have them put the team members that are in the rooms. I also set it up using the headings, because that will automatically make hyperlinks. So if I am group number 39, I can immediately click that and go to my group. Very easy. Now, this is what will keep you from flying blind. While I send my students to the breakout rooms and I can't see any of them, I can look and I can say, hey, look at that. Group number 1, they're answering their question. They're doing a great job. Perfect. They're good. Group number 2 is getting it wrong. Maybe I should go visit them. That is not the right answer at all. And group number 3 has written absolutely nothing. So maybe they're working and just forgot to record it, or maybe they're doing nothing at all. Maybe they're showing each other pictures of their left nostril. I don't know. So I can go visit group number 3. So it gives you an idea of which groups you need to visit and which ones you don't. So that way you utilize your time in a more efficient way. So that's why you want something where you can see them all working in real time. So that way you can know which groups to visit and which ones you can skip for the moment. All right, so that being said, any questions about breakout rooms before we all go on our way? So we're gonna just do 5 minutes just so you can see what they look like, which is way too little time for a breakout room, I understand, but I just want to give you a feeling for it. You're going to be randomly assigned, go to your breakout room, answer the following 2 questions. Which virtual learning platform are you going to be using in the fall, or you used in the spring, or both? And how can you embed inquiry using that platform? On your mark, make sure you have the link to the Google Doc, because it's going to disappear. On your mark, get set, go. Okay, when you're going to get an invitation to join the room, click accept, and then it will bring you back automatically after 5 minutes. It will set a countdown timer, which I'm going to actually set. Okay, so participants should be returning from their breakout rooms. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you all had a good discussion, probably way too short of a discussion. Fortunately, we don't have time to do a deep dive.
Group 12 would like to share their frustrations.
Absolutely, Group 12.
So for us, we were trying to still type our names in. It took us a whole minute to get our names in because it kept freezing on us.
Probably because
I started typing in, but then, you know, everybody else from the other groups are typing in and the screen's jumping everywhere. And then it was just frozen. And a message came up taking longer than normal to update or something like that. So we never even discussed the questions. We got our names in and thought we were doing pretty good with that.
Yeah, I would say kind of two things with breakout rooms. One of them is never give 5 minutes. That is way too short. I'm modeling what not to do because that is way too short. You would definitely want to give more time because it takes about a minute for everyone to get in, a minute for everyone to get out. You got to build in some time for the students to just be students and say, hey, how's it going? Want to talk? You know, you're going to have to give them a minute to just decide who's going to be the reporter and the recorder and the timekeeper. And then they might actually start talking about, you know, the topic. So never give them 5 minutes. I just wanted to give you a real quick look at what the breakout rooms looked like in case you've never seen them. The other thing is that there's so many people that we had on this session that I think our Google Doc would just like freaking out. Normally you would be dealing with smaller groups, most likely. You would probably be dealing with maybe, you know, 20, 30 students at a time. But if that is the case, then feel free to make, like, let's say you have a 500 person lecture hall that you're responsible for teaching in the fall. You can make multiple breakout rooms and send out different links. So you can say, you know, especially you can assign the breakout rooms ahead of time. So you can say, all right, if you're in breakout room, like last name A through F, please use this Google Doc, and, you know, G through blah, blah, blah. Just to make it a little bit less unwielding, you know.
I personally like when we have problems during these types of demos because that makes you aware before you use it for class. So
absolutely.
I thought this was perfect.
Absolutely. And so what you can see here is what I can see as the teacher. I can see which groups are done, which groups are still working on it, and, you know, kind of gives me an eagle eye view of the class, so I know which groups to go visit and which ones to address. And then you can also have this as sort of as a record for when you are going back. So like, hey, remember when we had that breakout room? We can't record the breakout rooms, but you can have a record of it on a Google Doc or whatever wiki of your choices. All right, we are just about out of time. In fact, we are out of time. So I am going to just wrap it up pretty quickly for everybody because I know you have places to go and things to do and lunch to eat. So, and I can hear my son in the background telling me he's ready for his lunch. All right, so now that we've talked about that, let's go back to the original question. Can you teach inquiry remotely? Please type it to the chat box. Let's see what we get. Oh,
yes, we can.
Yes, you can. These are images of my students from the spring teaching amazing lessons to each other remotely using the techniques that we talked about, manipulatives that they made out of paper, on PowerPoints, videos, demoing, all of these things. If they can do it, you can too, because guess what? You are innovative. You are imaginative, and you are going to do amazing things this fall. Do not see this as a challenge. See this as an opportunity to transform education. We are going to be the innovators who bring inquiry online. And in that process, please remember, be creative, be flexible, and be forgiving. You are not going to get it right the first time. You are not going to get it right the 10th time, but you are going to do amazing things, and I can't wait to see and hear what they are. So that being said, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I appreciate it. The full PowerPoint link will be available on Box. It is up there right now. There's also a 1-question survey. If you wouldn't mind completing that, I would appreciate it. And the most important thing is my email right down there. Please feel free to email me if you have questions about anything we talked about today, if you would like access to any of the PowerPoints or lessons that we used in the fall utilizing inquiry-based learning remotely, and anything else that you need. I am here for you. I'm happy to work with you. I know that you have a lot to worry about this fall, so if there's anything I could do to make your lives a little easier, I would be happy to do so. All right, thank you again, everyone, for coming. Good luck. Enjoy the rest of the conference.